come nobody's drinking beer? Guys, you just got permission to drink beer early in the morning. I mean, aren't we gonna take it? Well, it's a good thing you have me today, and I trained in theater, so hopefully you in the back can hear me. Are you guys good in the back? Okay, if for some reason I start to drift off and you can't hear me, just like start waving at me and then I'll get louder again. Does that work? Okay. How's everybody doing today? Are y'all good? All right. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for coming. It's a crazy honor to be here. I just am completely obsessed with everything about this organization and with all of you in here. I mean, we're all creative people. We all woke up early in the morning. I know for me, that's a big thing. My studio doesn't open till 10 because I'm not a morning person. So it's a really good thing to be here early in the morning. I would like to thank Yulia for everything you've done in putting together all of this and your team and saltwater, because who doesn't love saltwater, especially early in the morning? I know I'm making myself sound like an alcoholic. I'm really not, but yeah. So why am I standing here? I have done a lot of very random things in my life. So when preparing this presentation, I was like, how do I talk about what I've done in a way that is gonna make sense to people? And when thinking about the word beyond, like Yulia said, there's so many ways to interpret this word. And I was like, oh my gosh, and my ADD kicked in, and I thought of like a billion different things I could talk about. But don't worry, I'm not gonna talk about a billion. You all have somewhere to go today. So like Yulia said, my name is Amanda, and I am the creative director of the House of Perna as one of my many things that I do. I also am a stylist. I actually, while I'm standing here, they're filming a commercial in my studio. So I do a lot of different things, have a lot of different experiences, and it all comes down to one thing. I pushed the little space bar, right? Okay. Making sure. Okay, my title's really long, but it really sums it up. I sent a whole list of titles of what I was thinking of, and this is the only one that could really tie together the whole bunch of crazy that I'm gonna throw at you. So Beyond Your Limiting Beliefs is a life better than your wildest dreams. We all have that voice in our head, and you know, as a kid, they're like, oh, listen to the voice in your head that tells you right and wrong. There are two voices in your head, and one is a total liar. And that voice was the same voice this morning on my way here, was like, oh my God, are you gonna say anything that's gonna make sense, or is everyone gonna just think you're this crazy blonde person full of color? Hopefully you don't think that, but as I've learned, and I hope to all of you learn as well in your process of being a creative and just a human, it doesn't matter what other people think. You have to be you, because you are amazing, and there is only one of you, and if you try to be somebody else, you're never gonna do it as good as they do it, so why bother? Just be you, and be unapologetic as to who you are. I mean, and as you hear my story, there were so many times in my life that somebody said you can't, or you're too much, or you're not enough, and I believed them. And you can't, because the second that you step beyond your limiting beliefs, you can do things even bigger than you thought you could. As a short little synopsis, and then I'll go back to the beginning to explain how I got there. I have my own business. I worked for Calvin Klein as a designer in New York City. I worked for Oscar de la Renta. I did a collaboration with Hallmark. I've been on Project Runway twice and Flea Market Flip, which my husband and I won. Did not win Project Runway, but we'll get there. But yeah, and it was one of those things where I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Like, what do I have to lose? And you know, and that voice, that liar in the back of my head was like, no, nobody's gonna like you, you're not good enough. And I was like, you know what, shut it, we're good. I'm gonna try anyways. And I did it, and I did so many more things than I even thought I was gonna do. So here's my first quote. I have two for you because I just couldn't have one. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm very much a maximalist, and I love the whole more is more and less is a bore, so we have two quotes. So our first one is, unless you try to do something beyond what you've already mastered, you will never grow. And that's Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I really think that's such an important quote, because why keep doing what you know? Don't you want to learn something new? And that's the thing that I love about Creative Mornings, is you really have the ability to meet somebody who can help you have a new opportunity you never even thought of. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. I was always a really creative, slightly quirky kid. Anybody who knows me from way back when, and my husband and my best friend are here, and they can all tell you, I was spray painting shoes in the garage, throwing glitter on everything. My mom thought I was a little crazy. She wasn't completely wrong. I just loved to create. I created anything I could and everything I could. And I was a huge musical theater nerd. That was my life. And for me, I became my character when I put on my costume. Never made the correlation until later in life, but that was my whole everything, and I wanted to work on Broadway, and that was my goal. And I spent a lot of time with my grandfather growing up, who was an artist, so he encouraged all of my madness, where my parents were like, maybe we should find a more safe career and plan, have a plan B. And I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I should have a plan B. So when I went to college, I went to the University of Alabama. Anybody else went to Alabama? No? I'm here by myself. Well, I'm staying in Florida, so I guess I deserve that one. But anyways, I went to the University of Alabama because they had an amazing honors program. Once again, nerd. So I was like, yeah, their honors program competes with awards with Harvard, but I don't have to pay to go to Harvard. So I thought it was the greatest thing ever. So I went to the University of Alabama as a psychology major. I loved psychology. It was really cool. I wanted to help people and save the world. And it was a real job. So, everybody was happy. One of the perks of being in honors is you got first dibs on classes. So when we're looking through all the classes with my advisor, I'm like, ooh, sewing 101, what's that? So she put me in there. So fast forward to midterms, and I'm doing my psychology, and that's what I'm doing. And she says to me, okay, we need to talk. She's like, we need to talk, there's a problem. And I'm like super rule following when it comes to those kind of things. And I was like, I'm in trouble, what did I do? I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm like starting to sweat. And she's like, okay, first of all, this is a majors only class. How are you in here? And I was like, well, and starting to stumble. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to stop you there. Why are you not in here? You are too good not to be in this program. And I was like, you mean I can do fashion as a job? For real? I could play with clothes for real? So I call my dad and I'm like, so I know we talked about this whole psychology thing, but I really like fashion and I want to be a fashion designer. My dad's like, okay, you can do fashion and psychology because we need to have a backup plan. I said, okay, no problem. So me being the overachieving crazy person even back then, I was going for 2 degrees, completely separate degrees, very little crossover. I actually needed permission from 1 million people to take as many classes. Does anybody like Harry Potter in here? Okay, so you know how Hermione had to have the thing to turn the time? Time turner, thank you. Oh, I have the right people in my corner over here. All right, so you know how she has the time turner? Well, that's what I needed because I was literally taking that many classes. I did not sleep. I spent all of my time studying my psychology during the day and sewing at night. Needless to say, while everyone was at the bar partying, I was not. So I kept doing both, drove myself crazy, and then decided, okay, I want to go to Stanford for psychology, so I need to do research as undergrad. So I went to work and do research at a mental hospital. It was a requirement, so I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I had to go through 6 locked doors to get to my patients, and I would work with people who had severe mental disabilities, and they would hit doctors, right before I went in. I'm a very sensitive person. I wanted to take all of these people home with me. You can't do that. That's not good for them and not good for you. I just wasn't emotionally strong enough for this. So that next summer, I went and worked at Oscar de la Renta as an intern in New York City. And I fell madly in love. And I called my dad and I said, I'm gonna do fashion. I love psychology, I wanna help the world. I just don't think it's for me. I don't think I'm strong enough emotionally to handle that kind of a job where you have to really be okay with certain people never changing, because I wanted to just change them and help them and fix everything, and some people you just can't. So it wasn't for me, and my dad said, I think you're right, and I think you need to follow your heart. So I was like, what? okay, now I got permission. Can I actually do this? So I went back to school the next semester, and then the following summer, I was offered an internship with Calvin Klein. I was like beside myself. It was one of those things where I didn't know. I mean, you heard you have to go to Parsons or FIT to work in fashion. You have to, everybody said all these things when I would look things up online or talk to people I knew. And here I was from the University of Alabama. And I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. And I did. Before I wound up graduating, I had a job already at Calvin. And that was when the fashion industry was horrible in 2008 and everybody was getting laid off. And I happened to get a job in one of the biggest fashion houses. And it changed my life. It really did. So, okay. Being an overachiever, I worked at Calvin during the day, and I started my own business. Actually, no, take a step back. I started my own business when I was 19. Thought I knew everything. I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I did not, and I failed. And it was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? Like, I just threw away all that money? And, but it was such a learning lesson. I learned so many valuable things. So then I'm still working at Calvin, and I was bored. I mean, on paper, it was my dream job, and it was amazing. But you have to follow so many rules, because it's not you. You essentially have to design and be Calvin Klein, which was amazing, but do I look like Calvin Klein? I like color. I'm from South Florida. I like lots of color and a little bit of craziness. So it wasn't really for me. Actually, when I took the job there, my professors in college were like, really? You, Calvin? I was more of a Betsy Johnson kind of girl. So working at Calvin Klein was, I know, right? Who doesn't love Betsy? So Calvin was the opposite of what I believed in as a designer. So then I decided I'm going to push myself. So I'm going to try out for Project Runway. And then the voice in my head was like, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. And my husband will tell you, he tried to film my audition tape. He couldn't get me to talk. I like panicked, and I always have a lot to say. And I sat there in silence, freaking out, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And I said in my video, and I didn't do it because I looked awful. So then fast forward the next season, and they say apply again. So here we are making another video. And then I got on. Yay, right? You're like, oh my God, yes, my dreams are coming true. I thought I couldn't, but then I thought I could, and I did. So I get on Project Runway, and all I could think in my head was, okay, so on that season, we knew going in, 4 people were gonna get sent home the first episode. So I'm like, oh my God, it can't be me, it can't be me, it can't be me, and like panicked, and that's all I thought about was it can't be me. Well, it was me because that's all I was focused on. Instead of thinking, I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna make it to the end, and I'm gonna win, I was like, I can't get kicked off first, and I did. And I got kicked off first because, as a producer put it, I was too quote unquote nice and normal. I get home and my dad's like, you nice and normal? And my mom's like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like, I don't know, that's what they told me. So I said, okay, forget it, I moved on. So then I decided I was so under creatively stimulated, and I told everybody, I'm quitting my job at Calvin Klein. And everybody was like, no, you're not. What do you mean you're quitting? Do you have another job? No. What do you mean you don't have another job? I was like, yeah, I don't. I gotta get out of here. So I started my own business. I gave my notice at Calvin. They begged me to stay a month because we were in development phase. I said, okay. And by the time I left there, I actually got a job offer that was more than double what I was making when I left Calvin. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll like work on my thing on the side and take this job. So I started the House of Perna. When I was in college, I had a bunch of friends who were super amazing and helped me with all of the creative craziness that I did. And they jokingly called themselves the House of Perna because they're always at my house. So when I started this brand, I really wanted to call it the House of Perna because it isn't just me. There's so many people involved. And actually, part of my team is here today. And without them, I wouldn't do any of what I do. It's all about creative collaboration in any creative business. And so to name it Amanda Perna, to me, sounded very selfish. And that's nothing against any of you who might be designers who name things after yourselves. I'm not saying you're selfish at all. Just to me, for me, that wasn't the right move. So we started the House of Perna, and that same, like the week I started it, actually what pushed me to start it was I got invited to do a fashion show in Miami. I was still living in New York City, and I was like, ooh, a fashion show back home, done, okay. So I started my business faster. So here are some of the pictures from our first runway show. It was at that Temple House in Miami. So then I was like, okay, well, I don't really like working at this whole job thing with this other brand that I was working for. I was like, I need to focus on myself. So I started doing that. And in our first season, was it first or second season, Salma, when we first got selected? Okay, in our second season, we were selected by the Women's Wear Daily, and those of you who are familiar with fashion, it's like the major publication for our industry. They selected us to be an emerging brand at Magic in Las Vegas. So we were like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And that was another one of those where I was like, we're not gonna get picked. Like, everybody applies for this. Like, who the heck are we? We're like nobody. Like, nobody, we're not gonna get picked. And I was like, forget it, I'm just gonna apply. What do I have to lose? Like, literally nothing. It didn't cost anything, so I applied. And we got selected. So that was one of those moments where I was like, oh my God, like, people actually like what we're doing here. So we got selected, and it was life-changing. We met so many people. We got stores who started buying us. It was beyond exciting. Beyond. I didn't even mean to do that. Okay, so yeah, we were 1 of 5. And fast forward a little bit further, then we were also selected back another time as a all-star emerging brand. So we got another showcase. And to put things in perspective, these shows typically cost like $50,000+, and we got to go for what, like $1,000, I think it was. So I was like, yeah, score! We get to be on display for cheap. So as a small business owner, we all like things that are less expensive, right? Okay, so I gotta go quick. Okay, so while I started the House of Perna, I was doing styling on the side. So I was lucky enough to style for Neiman Marcus and for a lot of commercials. So then I got to the point where we opened our own studio, yay! And we opened in Delray Beach, first in Artist Alley, and then we've moved a bunch of times, don't ask. That's another story for another day because it's very long. But yeah, and it's been amazing being here since. And there's our first studio in Artist Alley, and there was my Camille's right here. There's Camille up there, and other members of my team. Okay, so then I didn't do, oh, what did I do now? Okay, I don't know. So then I was like, okay, did bad on Project Runway, I'm going back on. Everyone said, please don't do that. I went back on. I was made to look like somebody I'm not, which was not fun, and it's reality TV. So I was really bummed, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, people thought I was mean. I'm really not mean. I'm opinionated, but not mean. So here was us at a paintball challenge where we got shot at for 15 minutes straight, and they had to dig a paintball out of my head. That was fun. But anyway, so I got kicked off, and I was devastated. But we were invited then to do LA Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week, and then I got to deal with Hallmark. So from everything that happens that may be not so perfect, something great happens. Hallmark was a sponsor of my season, and they loved me. So they asked me to collaborate on a card. Actually a group of cards, which was like a dream come true. So they're my little cards that I did with Hallmark. You can actually buy them online. But yeah, it was like amazing. It was one of those moments where I was like, okay, this is great. So then my life changed even more. I had a daughter, and I thought, how can I be a parent and a business owner? I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. But I'm doing it, and we're doing more than ever. And I'm so blessed that now I'm able to have somebody who I can teach how to collaborate, and that there's enough for all of us in the world. We don't have to be stingy and hold back. We can collaborate and help each other because we're so much stronger together. Me standing here by myself, I wouldn't get very far. Me with my team, we're in Anthropologie, Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, and a ton of boutiques. And not because of me, because of everybody in my group. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.